Hey guys, Joe Miles here with Osseo Gear. This is the Mission Whitetail podcast. We're going to be doing a deep dive into what it truly takes to kill these mature bucks. We're going to step outside the box and look at the why for gear, tactics, training, and more importantly, the mindset from over 35 years of chasing these magnificent animals all over North America. Thank you for following along and welcome to Mission Whitetail. All right, guys, Mission Whitetail, episode 76, and we have got a new format, new location for tonight. We're at the Grand American Outdoor Show in Harrisburg, PA. Drake Deerman to my right, Johnny Stewart, Rendell Erik, and we just had a really interesting dinner with Bobby Worthington, and anytime you can be around that guy, it just gets the juices going, doesn't it? I know, Johnny, you said
he's really intelligent. I'm going to have to get my hands on his book. I know growing up, I read a bunch of North American whitetail articles and whatnot, but we talked on our way back. That's been 25 years. And now I got my new perspective on deer and this, that, and I think I want to revisit him and his books. And just listening to him at dinner was, he's an intelligent man. I'm like, man, I need to soak up more of this. And we were talking about coming back to do a podcast, and I was in like deer mode. I'm like, let's do it, man.
Let's do it.
I'm ready. The juices are flowing,
Yeah. So I think what's so cool about this group, and anytime we all get together and have different guys from different part of the country at these trade show type settings, is everybody hunts a little bit different, hunts in different types of terrain. And, we talked about this last night or night before. I just got back from Texas, and that's a very fun hunt, but it's totally different from like what you do, Rendell. Completely different from what you do and how you hunt. And it's just neat how different guys in different areas do what they do. And I mean, talk a little bit about, your style and how you hunt, Rendell, and where you hunt, and then maybe we can all do that.
Yeah, so I live in Iowa, so I hunt the Midwest a lot. I do travel to different terrain types to try to learn them. So I usually move out of my comfort zone maybe 1 or 2 times a year to pick up knowledge on that. I do over 95% pretty much public land. The grinding out there, you get a lot of different pressures and obstacles, a whole different ball game than like private land, stuff like that. And I do all mobile hunting. I don't think I had but one preset, and I preset that maybe October. So every day I'm hanging and banging, and my journey is a little different. So I'm having to revamp my hunting system, and that's been pretty interesting. Going from mostly like a weekend warrior to hunting 100 days in a season is you think you're going to do a lot of things a certain way, and it turns out that's not the best route to go. So it takes a couple years to modify your system. And then being around you, and then Bobby came in, and you're super excited, and I mostly sit back and I don't ask a lot of questions. Like last year at Shipshewana and some other places, I just pretty much listened to you and Bobby interact, and Bobby talked to other guys, and just his style intrigued me. So I actually ran his style this season, and there was some things that opened my eyes. Like I didn't have a lot of confidence in it, so I didn't like fully dive in, but I was testing it, and I made a lot of errors in that system that that I'm changing for next year. And there's a lot of things that I thought were like the bee's knees that I'm kind of moving away from. So it's like an evolution.
And it's constant, right?
Yeah,
you're constantly evolving. Yeah, and you strictly bow hunt, right?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Johnny?
Well, I like what you said last night, Joe, when we were all sitting here about whether you're in Mexico or something, and we're all sitting around talking deer. We love deer. We're ate up with it. And you said we were down, was it Mexico, sitting around, and the guys couldn't even really talk English or whatever. And it's just, they're the same, and that was pretty wild to hear, because I know, like I said, with my fiance, I'll go to dinner or something, and guy got a camo, and we start talking, and I might be there 20 minutes. You know that guy? I was like, oh, I don't know. You were able to talk to him for 20 minutes, but we're just ate up with it. And like you said, like we all hunt different regions, climates, states, habitat, environment. It changes all across the country, and they're all the same, but they're not the same. Like they all are whitetail. They're surviving and thriving, but there's differences, but also like in a mature deer, they're doing the same thing. It's pretty wild to have it all over the country. And me, I've been fortunate enough. I set myself up in life because I've been so fascinated with whitetails, kind of obsessed with them for such a young age, that in life I wanted to make sure I had my hunting season. So as I grew up and I worked, I wanted to make sure, like, money wasn't important to me. It was like, I need to hunt. And I started out Southwest, Pennsylvania, hunting around home. And then, as they built houses, and we kind of got in tight to houses, like the kind of urban hunting. And then we hunted different states. And then I got, later in my 20s and the 30s, kind of strictly public land hunting. And that's what kind of where I'm at now, probably just seriously public land, mature deer hunting in a wide variety of states. I feel like, for me, that's my challenge. That's what I love to do. I think the unknown variable for hunting these deer on this public land is the hunting pressure. And so a lot of guys can read sign, trails, rubs, scrapes, but when you throw that other variable in there, the pressure, how does it affect this animal? And it affects them differently. But when you get into, so like, that's what I like to try to figure out, is when I get into an area, you can read the sign and learn to lay the land, habitat, reader maps, but this is this other variable we got to figure out. And it fluctuates. I talk about how one year it could be a bunch of guys hitting this clear cutter or what have you pretty hard, and then, oh, I'm out of there. And then you move on. And I know I've sent a buddy in, I said, and they burned that up last year. It's going to suck this year. Then the bucks are back in there. So you got to keep up with the pressure, revisit areas. And because these deer do that, these mature deer, they're constantly searching and learning where the guys are. And they'll be where the guys aren't. The hunting pressure isn't. They know where it's at, and they live accordingly. So, and I've had a lot of luck, and I've learned a lot, met a lot of people. And yeah, public land, whitetail hunting. I mean, I bow hunt. I love tracking when I get the gun in my hand in the snow. But I'm also a student. I don't know everything. Listen to Bobby or you or even Rendell or guys. Even there's been a lot of times I went with. I think when my fiance started hunting, she don't hunt much. I took her bow hunting, and she's like, we hunting one day. And I said, hey, I'm gonna go hunt this area. She goes, I said, what do you think? We should go down by the creek? She looked at me like, you're the big deer hunter. I said, I don't know. Maybe you think they're thirsty and they want to get a drink, right? I mean, I don't know everything. So I like, even here at the show, meeting people, I'm intrigued to listen to people, and I've since started e-scouting for people and helping them and dropping pins and with Spartan Forge. But that's all another learning curve for me, is having these guys tell me about their spot and their years of experience when I'm e-scouting for them. And I'm learning from them I'm getting instant knowledge that I don't have to go and scout this mountain. Like I think we were talking about Alabama, and I had pins down there, and he's like, what's your pin? Do I hunt there? I said, oh, I guess I've been there. He said, that's a good spot. I said, yeah, I don't remember. I said, maybe I but and it's just a constant learning curve that I feel like you're always trying to achieve and learn more. And sometimes the more you learn, the less you know, but it's just, I could just get in a rabbit hole and talk. I don't even know where I'm headed, but
yeah, no,
how it is.
That's a good point. And I think one thing that really helps guys, and it certainly helped me, is to be able to check the ego. Yeah. Right. And we talk about learning, and I think that's something that, you kill a couple of deer, you start beating your chest, and you develop that ego. And boy, as soon as you think you've got it figured out, that's when you have those one or two. Oh boy, yeah. It'll humble you and bring you right back down to earth. Yeah. with quickness. And I didn't mean to jump in ahead of you, my friend, but
no, go
ahead and tell us a little bit about everything you do down there in the low country. And you travel a good bit too.
Yeah. So I'm Drake. Most people probably haven't seen me before. I do some, I started doing these shows last year with you guys. I live down in Alabama, and I hunt mostly, kind of like they said, like 95% public. For the last multiple years, it's really mostly been around the house, and then, I'll do, rut trips or whatever in other states, traveling around. But I work for myself. I've tried to set my life up as best as I can, really similar to what Johnny said, to where I do have, opportunities and time during hunting season and out of hunting season to go and scout and do, the stuff that it takes in other places, to be able to go and hunt. And just kind of now getting to a point where I do have the time and resources to be able to really devote time in other places. But, it's pretty interesting to me seeing the consistencies with where I live. It's really low deer densities. You've got to really look hard to find deer every year to hunt. It's not easy to do that. And so when you take those same, methods and same efforts and go into other places, and what you can come across has been pretty interesting, to see the rewards of doing that in other places. But back to what you said, Johnny, about learning from guys and talking to these guys. If you'd asked me 2 years ago if I'd thought that I was sitting here recording with all y'all, then I would have said you were crazy. But it's really cool coming and, talking to you guys and getting to know, it started off with I met Rendell in a parking lot on public land. And
there you go.
Sleeping in the beds of our trucks.
Sleeping in our trucks. And then, getting to know you and Johnny. It's really, people don't realize it from the outside looking in. We're all the same. We're in different shoes, come from different places. But at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of guys that are obsessed with hunting and trying to kill deer and wanting to learn. And that's been like the coolest thing to me, just seeing how, no matter where you're at in life or, in the hunting world, it's just the mindset of just being purely obsessed with the deer hunt. And that's been really cool to me. But yeah, I'm just, like I said, just now kind of getting to where I can kind of go and do what I want to do. I've done pretty good in Alabama and started kind of figuring some stuff out, but still, like Rendell said, learning a lot as far as the traveling and getting your own, kind of system down for how to go about new opportunities. So,
well, let's get right into it, and maybe we can all share an experience. But you this year killed an absolute giant public land buck, completely DIY, found the deer, studied the deer, stayed on the deer got bumped, and you stuck with it, and blood, sweat, and tears, and killed the buck. Walk us. I don't know that. Maybe you've told this story on another podcast, but for Mission Whitetail guys, I know it'll be very valuable to just kind of walk through, that hunt, soup to nuts. We got time.
Yeah.
Knock yourself out.
Yeah. I guess really to start that off is to break down kind of what my process is altogether. Like at home, my most busy time of year is right now, as far as when I'm scouting and when I'm trying to find new deer and figure out what, mature bucks are doing. And like I said, this is the first time I've kind of had the opportunity to take that other places. So I went to the piece of public that I ended up hunting in March of last year. Everything was still dead. Got to, shed hunt it and really get a lot of boots on the ground and found some good sign. Ended up going back, to check in the summertime to kind of try to get eyes on some of the deer that I had found some of the sign off of from the year before. And glassing and running cameras, I found one of those deer, and it was a giant deer. It wasn't the deer I ended up killing, but it was the deer that I decided to kind of devote everything I had to as far as for that hunt and for that state. made trips up through the summer to watch him and, move cameras around on him and stuff, and felt like I was on him really good. Well, I went up for the hunt. I went up a couple days early just to, make sure I had all of my stuff ready to go, try to keep eyes on him and make sure I was ready.
Were you glassing him from a distance, or you were just checking trail cameras? Or
so I was running cameras on him and glassing him. He was living in some standing corn, and then I could get high enough in trees glassing to see him in like grass patches out in the corn.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he was bedding in mostly, and then kind of using those ditches and stuff as travel routes. And so what I was going to my game plan, I guess, really for what I was going to do on that deer was to set up in the mornings and glass him. And when I knew certain places that he liked to bed that I could take advantage of, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So if he's, if I see him come in and lay down in one spot, then he's going to go to this place and I can kind of beat him to that.
Yeah.
Well, I went up there and day one, I didn't see him. Hadn't had a picture of him in a couple days. Day two, didn't see him. Still hadn't had any pictures of him. And by day three, it was the day before season. I was like, okay, something's wrong, because he was really consistent. So I kind of slipped in from the back way and kind of was just checking out what was going on in the area around where he was at. And some guys had been in there, and long story short, he got run out. So I spent 4 days after I realized he was gone looking for him, scouting, glassing, moving some cameras around, and I ended up relocating his running buddy about a mile away, and he wasn't with him. And at that point, I was like, okay, this deer could be realistically 3 or 4 miles away. He could be off the public somewhere where there's not people. I'm gonna have to kind of really sit back and reevaluate, figure something else out. So I decided to go and try to find a new deer to hunt. And I'm a big, like, one specific deer. Like, I want to find a deer and figure him out and try to kill him. That's what really gets me going, not just, the hunting itself. And so I started a process of just doing the same thing, looking and glassing and trying to find something else. I ended up the second day finding the deer that I ended up killing. Watched him for 2 days and ended up killing him on day 3. So and this deer was actually living in a really what you would consider, I guess, an overlooked spot. Kind of a CRP field that's really close to a parking lot that people were walking past to try to get deep. And I found him glassing. And there were 3 places in that CRP where he was kind of landing regardless of what he was doing or where he was at. And it was a really big open field, like no trees. So you got to find a way to hunt the edge of this and kill him on the edge. Because spot and stalking also wasn't an option because this grass was like 5 to 10 foot tall. Mm-hmm. Ended up day 3. There was a watering hole that he would drink out of that I knew if he would drink out of it from certain places, I could shoot him. And I had really good access. I had really good wind. I could hunt it repetitively without him knowing I was there. So I knew if he bedded close enough, because his bedding was really not based on anything other than that grass patch. Like wherever he was in it when the sun came up, he just kind of laid down, and he might shift a couple times throughout the day and then go to one of those, few places in the daylight. So I knew if I hunted it enough and he was bedded close enough to that water at some point that he would drink out of there in the daylight. So I thought it could possibly be one of those games where you sit it for days on end and eventually it happens. Well, the first day that I hunted it to try to kill him, he ended up being bedded 80 yards from where I set up. And he made a bed shift in the middle of the day, so I knew it was there. He moved in, bedded down at 60 yards. And I dropped down actually like I was in my saddle, but I dropped down off my platform 2 or 3 feet and got on the limbs where I had a little better shot. And at 3 o'clock when he stood up to stretch, he turned and got broadside, and I shot him out of his bed at 64 yards.
That's a long shot.
That was a long shot.
It's a poke.
Well, that's a heck of a hunt, man. I mean, guys, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm sure you can find our new Osseo banner for our trade shows, and you can see that big slammer up on there, man. I know when I got that picture, I think maybe Rendell may have sent it to me first. I was like, good gosh, what a buck.
How big was he, Dre?
He was 164 inches.
Just a
Public? I don't
He-
know.
he was
Might have to
all
give him
right.
another year.
Yeah, another
That's
year
a
or
toad.
two.
I probably
Yeah.
should have gave him another year, but
Yeah, no, you wouldn't. And that, you know, we Jonathan Moreland and I were talking about this the other day, and you know, the most rewarding, I think, to everybody in this room, the most rewarding hunting is what money can't buy. Right? In that public land, the only thing money can buy you on public land, and this is coming from Moreland's mouth, who's hunted a lot more public than I have, is maybe time. Right? If you got a couple $1 million in the bank, and maybe you don't have to have a couple $1 million in the bank, but that's the only thing I can see that money can buy you on public is more time to hunt, because you don't have to worry about being at work or whatever. But it really, when you do that, it's so admirable and so rewarding to kill a deer like that, because it's as fair chase, if you will, as it possibly can be.
Yeah, and one thing we were just talking about recently, or a couple guys come by the booth. To me, it's like, so I started hunting this year, like end of September. I didn't kill my first deer till November 17th. Not saying I hunted every day, but probably on average 3 to 4 days a week. There's a lot of time in there, and so I told them guys, it's like, you know, like when they jumpstart someone's heart and you're flatlining, you got one spike. It's just like boom. So it's like from October 1st till November 17th is just like, you know, you might see some deer and you haven't pulled your bow back. So it's like the hunt can, it could start and end in a matter of 15 seconds. Like, and that's how my hunting was in November. And it's like you're flatlining, just like boom, it's done and over. And we wait for that high point and that one chance out of that 6 weeks. And I think it's another, how Bobby talks about a mental game and being mentally tough. I think it comes back to, you know, you sit there 6 weeks, you know, 4 or 5 days a week, whatever it may be, the money, the time. And I think about all the money I'm spending. I got a cameraman and I'm sitting here. I got bills to pay. And then when that spike hits, you're like, I have to make this count. And the guy's over my shoulder with the camera. So I feel like that pressure is added on top of just being that close to a mature animal. You know, it's like, this is this one chance. So it's a pressure cooker. You have to be mentally tough, be on your A game, and make that shot, because it's like you're not going to have a lot of opportunities on that public. So you get that spike, boom, I made it count, you know. And I think that's another aspect, like another thing I like about the public land is you don't have a lot of opportunities. So you need to be, you know, because your head, you can get in your head so bad, it's like, this is my only chance. I can't mess this up, and that'll just blow you out of the water, you know. So, you know, that's another thing I like about the public land. You might have a couple chances, and you have to capitalize, you know, because it's not where you're going to get opportunities, endless of opportunities.
Sure.
You know, unless you're like Annie Mae.
I hate that he went back tonight, because he would have been great to have. It'd been great to. Yeah, we love Andy, and he is as good as they get at that. You know, and from my perspective, you know, I've hunted public, but I'm mostly a private guy. And in our big river swamps in South Carolina, you know, I figured it up. There's about 8,500 acres there of private land, and there's about 110 guys that hunt it, you know, through that thing. So no, it's not public. And our rifle season starts August 15th. It goes to January 1st. You can shoot 5 bucks all in the same county. The first 3, there's no antler restriction. The last 2, I think, have to be 4 points on one side. So it gets hammered. You know, corn piles, feeders, food plots, tower stands, 4-wheelers. You know, it's an expanse of hunters that are in there, and it's a big tradition in South Carolina. I mean, it's 100 degrees, humidity, so it's tough hunting, and it's big river swamp, and it's so I enjoy that, but then and that's very rewarding for me to go in there. Like, I've hunted a buck I've killed a few. I did not kill a buck in South Carolina this year. Last year I killed one. The year before I killed a couple. But there's one deer down in that swamp that if you said, Joe, you could go shoot a 200-incher in Kansas, or you could shoot this 140-incher that's in this river swamp in South Carolina, I'd take that buck over it every time, because that is going to be more rewarding for me, because I know how much that deer's been hunted. I know how hard it is going to be to get him, and hopefully he was still alive. I'll get a chance to hunt him again this year. And that I say this word over and over again: rewarding. But that's the rewarding, and the hard work is certainly a part of it, but also having fun. We talked about the having fun hunts, and how I'll start in South Carolina early. I'll go to the Midwest or in the rut. That's all do it yourself, hard hunting where you got to stay mentally in the game. But then in the late season, when you're up here tracking in the freezing cold, in the snow, I'm down in Mexico or Texas having the time of my life, eating mesquite grilled ribeyes and, seeing 15 bucks a day, and, they're coming to feed, and no, it's not the same, but it's a lot of fun. And that's just, what I really wanted to talk about was how different parts of the whitetail hunting and range are.
Yeah, and I know I've hunted the South. I've hunted South Carolina, Alabama, and like you said, I can relate to what you're talking about. I've been in them situations, and I took what I've learned about, and I didn't initially start hunting public land, but the land I hunted was pressured, and like I said, when I was younger, the articles I read, we talked about it, that they were more like Midwest, like back 25 years, like it didn't relate to the pressure I had, and it wasn't public, but it was pressured property. And fast forward into where I now, in the last 15 years hunting public, and I've been in the South, I've been in Alabama, and I can relate that to Pennsylvania. Actually has a lot of similarities. Alabama and the woods I hunt in Pennsylvania have a lot of similarities, and it just comes right back to me. And there's the ladder stands and the parking spots and the corn piles, and here we are again. And in South Carolina, I've hunted there with my buddy, and I didn't see anything. I just know what a mature whitetail, he might not be as pressured as much, but there's pressure there. Yes, I think it's easier to get on a deer. The less he's pressured, the more he'll let his guard down. I feel like some of these areas on public that have mature deer, that it's super pressured, I pass that up because they're on pins and needles. And guys tell me, I'm hunting this public. I'm like, there's good deer interspersed with private. I'm like, I wouldn't even go there, because there's five. I got 150s. I said, yeah. I said, this deer is on pins and needles. I wouldn't even, they hunt. Yeah, I can't get him. I said, because he's pressured often, and you got to find the off times. Maybe late January is a good time to hunt, or maybe the first day. But through the thick of things, he's on his A game, and you're not going to get a big mature deer when he's on his A game. And like I said, when you're in the South, at the same time I was down there in the rut, but the same tactics come back to me. I find the little seams where the guys aren't is where the deer are bedded. It don't, and I've seen where guys are bait piles and stands. It's all hunting pressure, whether it's public or private. They're pressured and they're living accordingly. And a lot of it's by roads, and this is stuff that has been talked about, little seams, little strips. But you're right, Joe. It's different, but it's all the same, as we said, and even like in the South, like you said, I said, what's a big deer down here? 110, 112. And you see, and I start shaking like this, and I know that's a big animal. And everybody asks me, or when I'm asked, what state do you like to deer hunt? I said, whatever state I'm in. Yep. I don't have a preference. If I'm deer hunting, and you've, whatever's your challenge and what's rewarding to you and how you want to hunt, how you want to live your life is your choice. But all together, when you get together and all walks of life, you all have, if you're a good hunter and you succeed, you have that same path, that same way of thinking and harvesting an animal. Like you said, you're down in the South and up north, and it's pretty amazing.
It is
amazing. Live in the whole country in different regions, and you can hunt them, and it's pretty wild.
It is.
And
Rendell?
What I've really come to realize and learn is there is no apples to apples on anything.
Yeah.
Private
good
to
one.
private, public to public, everything is so situational. I've
Situational.
been on private that was more pressured than any public I've ever been on, and I've been on public that's less pressured than any private I've ever been on. And I came up this year, hunted with Johnny for 2 weeks in Pennsylvania, been all over the Midwest and in between. And a deer's a deer. They kind of relate to the same things, and stuff that worked for me in Iowa, I got on deer in PA doing it. And I'm more of the, I'm really aggressive, get up, find the bedding areas, postseason scout. Then I get in there early season and get close to the bedding. But having kind of feel like I kind of figured that out a lot. I want to keep growing and learning. So like you said, it's like an ego check. Like you could just keep doing what you're doing and stacking numbers up. But I want to be more like the Andy Mays of the world. So I'm like totally broke away from what was working, and I'm trying to figure out other things because there's no one system that works all the time ever. And you can get, we could all be on the same deer and we could all kill that deer, but we could kill them 3 different ways.
Sure.
So I'm trying to learn all the different ways. And then I might not use every single thing that you might do, but I want to pick pieces out that fit into my system. And I've learned like Johnny's system's Johnny. He has his own mind, how he sees the woods. I can't do that because I'm not Johnny Stewart. But there's things that, okay, he does that. I like that. And then there's things that he probably thinks like, oh, Rendell, what the heck are you doing? And he'll pick up other things that he likes that I do. So you necessarily can't pick up just, I want to run this system. This is what he does. I'm going to do it. Well, I'm going to see it totally different than that guy. So I want to pick just pieces out and still keep my own style and just intermingle. There we go.
Yeah.
What works for me. So it's just there's just everything is so situational on what you do, and there's so many decisions you got to make. Like he said, the public land stuff is a absolute mental grinder, where private's more just its own set of challenges. And like Kansas, I got a couple thousand acres of private permission in Kansas, started hunting that. But I was hunting it like I was hunting public land because that's what I mostly do. And I think that was the wrong approach. I was way, way too aggressive. Like he said, the pressure, you're hunting more pressure on public, what the deer's going to do. And when that's not there, I was hunting those deer on private land like they were pressured, and they weren't. So they weren't exactly doing what I thought they were going to do. And then I just kind of blew it up because I got kind of too aggressive. So got to learn to throttle back some, hunt them more like, all right, this deer's, not going to be as, I don't know, smart, I guess, or experienced.
Mm-hmm.
But then you got other challenges like boundaries and adjacent property pressure, where the bedding's at, stuff like that. And then, the whole Bobby Worthington experience.
Yeah.
There's lots of things that failed at that. And yeah, I just like to go on adventures and do cool stuff and all. It's not always about killing. For me, it's like just knowledge seeking. Try to be the best all around whitetail hunter that I can be.
And like he said, the hunting aspect of it, like I was recently in Illinois and I had a chance to shoot a deer, and I only had a 3-day hunt, and I should have shot the deer at 10 yards, and I ended up taking a shot at 35, and it didn't work out. But and I at the closing, like we did the video, and at the closing I said, like just reflecting on the hunt, and I asked myself, John, why didn't you shoot that deer? And honestly, I think I love hunting so much. I didn't want to miss my opportunity that I could have had and sat in the snow with the great weather. The 2 more days I had to hunt, and that was my last 2 hunts of the year. It was January 16th. I'm sitting there and I have, like they say, one in a hand, 2 in a bush. You know what I mean? I wanted them 2 in a bush. But I don't know if I really wanted it. I did, but I wanted to experience. It's like I love hunting, and it's not always about killing. And I tell people that, like even if you don't kill and you hunt all year, look at what you'll learn as the season changes all the way into January, how the deer react and move. And there's years that I haven't killed, like Bobby said, 2-3 years.
Yeah.
You might not kill a deer, and I've went that long, and times even hunting a ghost. But I wouldn't change it for the world. Look at what I'm optimistic, and look what I learned in them 2 or 3 years hunting every day. Once you put your tag on it, you're done. You're not in the woods. You're done. You know, but if you sit there and hunt and experience all this, and but another thing about us is like you got to be confident in a certain way, but you also got to be like, I don't know how I want to say, like not optimistic but humble, like not overconfident, you know. And you got to find that happy medium. You know, I think like I always reference like a balance scale, you know, and even when I talk about deer, whether people ask me a question, and I've seen people even mention, oh, you said this in one time and then you said this in another time. Well, it's so situational to where, yeah, I'm going to do this here to tip the scales in this direction, but in another scenario, I'm going to do a 180, you know. And like Rendell said, and even spending so much time in the deer woods, it comes back to situational. No two deer are the like Bobby said, the personalities. I believe that. And I used to say, hey, if you were hunting humans, you know, and you want to go find where they're eating, you go sit down at McDonald's and you sit there every day and John don't show up. I don't hunt I don't eat at McDonald's. You know what I mean? It's not like that, you know. And I say times about, my analogy is like, you know, when guys are like, see a deer walking, going, you know, you always think, where's he going? What's he doing? He's got to be going here. But does he really know where he's going? I think sometimes he doesn't. And it's like, if you were like following me or whatever, and I get in my vehicle and I drive down the road and you pull me over, where you going, John? I don't know. I was just going to I got this new car. I was going to take it for a ride. Well, it's not like that all the time. You know, I think you try to put deer in the position to where you can predict their movements. And I don't always believe in, even from tracking deer, in that they're nomadic sometimes, and they don't always have a direct, defined direction in their mind. Sometimes their nose dictates where they want to go, and that sometimes they have to move a distance to figure out, what do I want to do? Where am I going? You know, in time they'll figure it out, but it's just, I don't know, it's pretty wild, you know.
You can't put human logic into how a deer operates. If you try to humanize it and say, okay, this is what he should do, but based on human logic, that's not going to work.
You're correct.
Yeah. And you doing so much tracking, I know you see that.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, he should do this, and he's not. But okay, well, this is what a human would do. You know, logically, with my brain thinking through this, and this, and that's not what the deer does, because he doesn't think like we do.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, totally. You can know so much about them, but not everything, because their brain isn't wired to be like you. But even like I said, it's not always they know what they're doing, you know.
So, you know, we got a few more minutes here, but in maybe a short, each guy take maybe a short segment and talk about your system, like from start of the season to late season. You know, we'll just go in a circle. Rendell, start off with, you know, what is your system? Like, what do you, once, we don't need to go through all the preseason stuff, but you know, when the season opens, what is your system? Like, what do you do?
So my system is, I usually have everything scouted. I found buck beds. I went through and got everything. I found inventory. I have a certain number of bucks. Usually I like to target bucks 150 plus. So let's say I got my inventory of that. I got as many beds found as I can on each of those deer. I got the photos to verify that they're there. And then I am pretty much on them. I think I know they're bedded there on this wind, which is an educated guess. It doesn't, you know, like you said, I'm humanizing the deer.
Yeah.
And then I'm going in, I'm trying to get as close as humanly possible, and I'm waiting for them to come out of the bed. And I'm doing that all the way up until the last week of October. I know there's some windows in there, like October 10th through the 15th in Iowa. Every year on camera, every camera I got usually has mature. They're up and moving in daylight. So that might be the dates I really push hard in on maybe some of the bigger bucks that I might be kind of cautious with. And then the last week of October, I've really got egoed and stubborn as hell. I'm super stubborn.
You
So,
don't say.
Yes.
Rendell Erik. Did everybody hear that on video? Rendell Erik is stubborn. Johnny, do you think, is that true? There's no way that's true.
Can't be. It can't
no,
be
it's
right.
not. It's not true. That's not
Sounds
true.
like a
Yeah, that's
Get the wrong
sorry.
guy.
I derailed your conversation, but I'm glad we got that on video.
Yeah, so I've learned the ultra aggressive on the bed saddle hunting thing. Need to completely let it go. That's why I really picked up on Mr. Bobby's system. Tried that out. I wasn't too confident, but now I am absolutely convinced in that system now. So dropping the saddle stuff, dropping the bed stuff, switching in the rut funnel deal. Got to have presets. Go to more tree stands. Have the saddle mobile game. Because what I found running that was all the bucks I was targeting only came through that rut funnel one time. So you're going to have to pick that one and just sit in there. So I'm moving around way too much with the mobile. You can have it just in case, or you want to jump into something, but that's where the presets. So I'm going to preset all my main buck rut funnels, just like Bobby would. And you got mock scrapes and stuff like that, but go into that system and that'll help. And then late season, it's more like you're coming back to food, but the bedding game is really hard because all the does are pushed up on the food. Everything's shifting. There's so many shifts through the season too. So that late season, I am not very good at it all. So that's like the last chink in the armor of my system. I'm trying
evolving.
Trying to figure that out. And you got a lot more, like me and Johnny were talking. Mobile hunting that time of year is tough. I got to roll up a late season bibs, late season top, and then I got all my mobile gear. Your hands are freezing off. It's 5 below zero and you're trying to hang a tree stand or whatever. And then the deer can see so much further away. So like Johnny, he jumps into the gun mode and does all the tracking and everything like that. And I'm more out there bow hunting like a crazy person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm more like, all right, well, I want to try Johnny's system now. And I want to get into Mr. Miles's, let's just go have fun and shoot some deer on the ranch kind of system.
Yeah.
So it's just like, just doing different stuff, trying everything. Like, it's okay to not identify as one thing. I'm really like, I didn't think I ever really do that, but the more I hunt and try other things, I was trying to make the saddle work in situations that didn't really necessarily best for, just because I was like, all right, everybody knows me as a saddle hunter, so I need to do this.
Yep.
Or a bed hunter, so I always have to hunt beds. Now it's more like, all right, I want to do whatever the best thing is for that application. And then I want to have fun too, because man, grinding on public land for 100 days straight, getting the crap kicked out of you is not, I'm not going to lie, it's not much fun. So
yeah, no, I can see it. No, 100%.
So I just want to do fun stuff. You only have one life, and you can take all the critics and whatever. Throw
Correct. Who cares what anybody thinks?
Yeah.
Do what you like, right? Do what makes you. I mean, at the end of the day, we do this because it's fun. We don't do this because of how people are going to perceive us.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all in which. Yeah. It's your hunt.
It's your hunt.
Like
Johnny, what about you?
So for me, going into fall, usually I start hunting around early October, and I usually I live near Pittsburgh, so I've been like stuck in I have a camp in northern PA, the Big Woods National Forest, Ohio, West Virginia. Kind of they call that the tri-state, because I can hit them 3 states. So usually I have historical data, being in the woods now 30 plus years, and every year there's usually a buck left, in an area you're hunting. So you have him to go after next year. So I usually have just in them 3 states, mainly PA, because it's my home state. I usually have like a half a dozen, 130 to 40 plus inch deer. I got my options pretty open. I have a couple bigger ones, but sometimes they'll disappear. So I got a half a dozen 130 to 140s. I'm kind of on. Ohio, I have some cameras, usually 2 or 3 bucks there. West Virginia, but I play the odds going into October. Where's my best chance early? I think they're kind of coming out of a summer pattern, and you can catch them on that, whether it's more of a feeding, crepuscular type deal, and then that's that up through like the first week or so of October. And if I have to drive, and I don't have cell cameras, I had a few, but I like the challenge of not like I like having a camera up in the woods on a different state, and you need to go get that camera and get data. How are you going to go get it without spooking all the deer? So I do a lot of camera pulls at night. You know, like I'm not putting a camera up there one time and just getting all kind of intel off it. Like I feel like I want that challenge, but that's just me. I'm just really hard on myself, and so I'll up through the first 2 weeks of October. Hopefully I get a deer, usually on food source, acorns or whatever. It's hot, water nearby. Then I get into mid-season scrape hunting, and it's wherever my odds are best. If I feel like, man, and I know areas just from historically being and refining these areas and bucks, historical data from bucks that are, 4 to 5, 6 years. I've been following a few years. So wherever my odds are, and I get that 50% range odds, like I got a chance of killing this deer, I'll do that. And sometimes you get into the rut, it can be a little crazy just because that's the rut, and it's still wherever I haven't tagged a deer and still play the odds, where's the food, where's the dose. I'll run to different states, and then you get into kind of like mid-November. Like this year I ran out to North Dakota, public land, and I shot a good one. And like talking to Andy, you see the deer he kills, but you don't see all the time he puts in, and then like I kind of think about Andy, and when I go to North Dakota, I was like, I don't have much time here, maybe a week. And I need to be hiking and scouting, and I always talk about knowing. No. You need to know what the animal's doing and know I can kill them, to some degree. You need to know enough to harvest that animal. And I always say, don't hope hunt. And I was younger, I'd sit in a tree, find a big rub, and I hope a deer comes by. And you just picture a deer coming by in your head. And so many times I would hunt on a hope. And when I started thinking I'm hope hunting, I get down. I need to know. So, yeah, I did go to North Dakota, and that was an out-of-state hunt. And wherever, them few states I haven't killed, I'll stick with. I'll get the gun out this year. I did good in the snow in PA. I love tracking. Got a good deer down, and getting into late November into December. And I'm not, and I am, and getting, like how Rendell talks about getting burned out, I feel like I look at it as like, a man can't sprint for 300 yards, but a man can sprint for 40 yards. You got to be short and hard and go at it, but you need that time. You can't be, it's volume and intensity, it's one or the other. So you need to be intense for a short time. You need to be on your A game when you're hunting these whitetails. So I'm talking like a 4-day hunt or 3, do all your scouting, hit it hard, do everything right. So even coming home from a hunt, I'm resting. And you need that downtime to get intense again. You can't just be pinging, going 100. You can't do it. You just can't do it. I mean, I don't care how good you are. I mean, everybody can vary in degrees how hard you can go for how long, but at some point, and even like during the season, I'll maybe even when I'm on a hunt, maybe I'll just sleep in a day or go for a ride in a vehicle, watch fields. And that's just kind of like, then I'll kick myself like, you should have been out in a tree. Then it kind of reworks the gears in my head to set them straight again, because it can be demanding getting up every morning, going out, and it's a mental game that way, somewhat physical. But, in through November into December, I'm usually into a gun hunt, and I'll go wherever I need to. If I have to hop in a car, drive 20, it doesn't matter. It's what I want to do. And I really love late season, getting into like Christmas, January. I was really fortunate the last couple of years in these, I like big woods mountain, East Coast mainly, and I'll travel to the Midwest if I have to, but finding that food source, you get that cold weather for 5-6 days, these deer have to feed, and you get them go hand in hand. And like with the Aussie gear, I think it's probably the warmest stuff I've ever, I put it on this year, Joe, and it was 0 degrees at the bottom of the tree. When I was 15, 20 years old, I had layers and layers and layers of cotton and whatever I had on. And I had, and I hated winter hunting. I would do it just because I wanted to be tough on myself. That's who I am. But, you start shaking and I would get wet on the way to the tree. And as long as you're dry and you get that stuff on, and people don't really realize that it's worth its weight in gold, like to have good gear. Because I'm not afraid to sit in 5 to 10 degree weather.
Sure.
And I'll do and I learned that the deer won't be too active early in the morning. So you just kind of get in to about the 8-10 o'clock hour. These deer have to feed, so I find they're usually bedded early, and then you get to 10 to 2 is when they're going to be active then before dark. So you can kind of just hunt the creme de la creme, the 10 to dark, and I've had a lot of luck. They have to feed now. I mean, the body of the fat's down. They have to get up. They got to feed. You got a good food source. You got cold weather. You can capitalize. So I shot 2 deer in the winter, and Illinois, I didn't shoot. That should have been my 3rd deer. But I'll go right up to the end, and I don't, part of me doesn't want it to end, but I love the late season. And then talking about pressure, how it can be, the longer a deer goes without being pressured, the easier he is to kill. He lets his guard down to some degree, and a lot of guys are hunting this public in through November, and these deer, I find a lot of older deer being nocturnal, but when you get into the January, there you got the cold weather, and they have to eat, and the pressure's low. This spells success for me.
Absolutely right.
So I really enjoy late season. I love the snow, whether it's gun or bow, and and then that season ends in January, and then it's back to scout, and you still have deer left over, running cameras, and it's just it just keeps going. But I think with me I've had some success in the last couple of years. I'm learning every year, but historical knowledge and hunting the same grounds, and then once you hunt these same grounds, then you can take, and it's relatable to other places, and you can kind of go right to that spot, and you can eliminate 1,000 acres, you can eliminate 700 acres, 800 acres. I can get right to the point. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So,
no, good system. Yes, sir.
All right. I think a lot of what I'm doing is really consistent with kind of what Johnny's doing, especially like talking. We just met, was it today or yesterday? But just talking mostly mountains around my house. So deer kind of do similar things, even though it's a really different situation. But most of my hunting all around is like more of a long game kind of deal. I know you said not talk too much about like off-season type stuff, but I do most of my scouting and most of my gaining intel as far as what I feel like I need to know or may have missed in those months after season before it greens up. And I do feel like, especially in mountainous, big woods type of stuff where agriculture is not as big of a factor, like me and Rendell have talked about how, the crop rotation, you may scout something and it may not be as effective until the next year when the crops are doing the same. I don't run into that as much, and I'm sure you probably don't either. So a lot of that goes on during that time through the summer. Obviously it's a combination of, keeping up with deer that I have known about and, looking for new deer. Come into the season, my hunting really starts pretty much every year in September. I really, really like the September hunting in other states. I usually take at least a week, or like this year I took 2 weeks, going to other places. And it's kind of mine, it's different from home. You can get on bucks that are not necessarily afraid to move in the daylight. If you can find a good one and figure out what he's doing and he's not too pressured, you can kind of get in on him and catch him making some mistakes that he's not going to make in, mid-October. But then, when that gets done, that kind of gap between when the season comes in for me at home and that hunt, I spend a lot of time late summer or in that time setting up and getting ready for my season. I do a lot of those older bucks where I'm hunting at, and, in a lot of places use similar core areas year after year. I feel like once they get to a certain age, not to say that they use the same bed every day. I disagree with that 100%, but we'll have those areas when they're in an area when they're in that general area where they like to spend their daylight hours. And I really like to kind of find those areas and figure out how they use that and go from place to place. And I'll kind of manipulate some of that on my own as far as like, when they leave that area, I'm building scrapes and kind of getting my setups ready for when they move in. So a lot of my Octobers are a lot of, there's not a ton of like deer where I'm at. So, where you said you might have a half a dozen, I might have 3 mature good bucks that I'm really honing in on. And I own my own business. I'm in my second year of having my own business, so my hunting is not like as much as y'all get to hunt or you get to hunt. You know, I have to be really particular with when I go, and when I go, I got to be efficient. So a lot of my historical data combined with, you know, weather or what makes a deer do something specific is when I kind of knock off and take the time when I know he's in that area and there's a reason he should do something to try to get in and kill that deer as fast as I can. You know, 2-3 day spans at a time, kind of like how you said you can't sprint 300 yards, but getting in and hitting those quick bursts and getting them killed before they really know that they're being hunted and before I miss, you know, too much of what I got going on outside of that. Usually in like November, our rut is at the tail end of November, like after Thanksgiving. So my early November is usually spent in other states. Primarily for the last few years, it's been more of a, you go up somewhere, you know there's some good deer there, whatever, but, you know, scouting, hunting, doing that. You don't really have much history with it. Just, you know, you see something you like, you shoot it. I am kind of shifting that, you know, as I get more opportunities to go and do more towards kind of what I'm doing at home, as far as having specific deer that I'm hunting. And if there's a reason for me to go up there, whether it's the rut or, you know, whatever time it is, I'm getting more to where I'll take that time to go and hunt them for a few days, rather than making as many, I guess, just annual trips, like go up somewhere for a week or 10 days or whatever, more so than I have been doing in the past. But yeah, doing that, come home, the deer chasing, usually about the time that all that Midwest stuff starts slowing down, the deer at home are starting to get right. So that late November through pretty much Christmas, you know, grinding out pretty hard at home, trying to kill those deer. And then usually late season, I'm usually taking a trip somewhere out of state. I get a big kick out of that, just all around the, I guess more food to bed pattern kind of stuff is my favorite way of hunting. I'm really not a big rut guy. I feel like I kind of suck at the rut. I never kill the deer I'm hunting when it's going crazy. But I like making a trip late season somewhere where I can go up and, you know, try to find a good deer to hunt late and kind of bounce back and forth with him. I'm not always successful doing that, but I've killed a couple pretty good ones doing that, and it's just fun to me. It's kind of like what they were saying about sometimes you just got to get out and go and have fun. That's kind of my just go, no pressure, you know, enjoy it kind of trip. And then by the end of the season usually ends, and as soon as the season ends, I'm back scouting and, you know, shed hunting, doing that. So it's a year-round process.
Sure.
And I'm in the woods probably more not during the season than I am actually in the season. But, you know, when I hunt, I have to be pretty efficient and try to be effective and make the sits count that I get in.
Yeah.
So.
No, all great systems. You know, mine is probably different. You know, we start August 15th in South Carolina, super early. So, and then I also try and hit that opener in Kentucky, and that's the first Saturday in September. So we're talking really, really early season, velvet bucks. Mm-hmm. I mean, bean fields. In South Carolina, it's all about food. I'm either on the X, the opener, like on the food. I know that he's coming to that area, to that bean field, to whatever he's eating, muscadines, greenbrier, whatever it is he's eating right then. He's been there 2 or 3 days in a row, and I'm either get on the X or I get to the food. You got a lot more. You get on the X, that's kind of a one and done deal. If you are on that food source and he doesn't show up but 4 or 5 does do, you got to get out of there in the afternoon, right? And that's when you blow it up. So that's a risky play, but it can be absolutely killer, especially that first of the season. And then the safest one is to kind of figure out, I don't really ever pay attention to beds. I used to be a big, you know, try to find beds and do all this bed stuff. And I want to know a general area early season where a buck may be bedded or an area he may be coming from. And if I can get in between that area but closer to the food, but then I can still escape without disturbing that food, that is something that can last a while, and you can get 2, 3, 4 hunts early season out of that. South Carolina, again, there's so much food early season. There's briar everywhere. There's muscadines everywhere. There's, in that river swamp, there's food plots. There is some ag down there. So it's tough early, but you can get it done. And then when you transition to, say, a Alberta or a Kentucky early season, that's all for me glass and beans. I'll glass beans, and that will be because it's out of state or out of country. If you're in Alberta, that is on the X hunt because I've got limited time. So I'm going to push the envelope right then. And if I get 2 days in a row of a buck doing the same thing in a bean field, I'm going to go in there and get on the X and try and kill him right there. Well, let's say we get past all that. We get into the middle of September into October. I'm back home in South Carolina. And there, I'm going to hunt kind of like a micro funnel on scrape lines of a single buck area. And what I mean by a micro funnel is we'll have, like, for example, Andrew's behind the camera and so is Wells. We went in and there's a duck pond that is fenced in on one of the properties that I have to hunt. And there's several scrapes, but because the deer have to funnel around that duck pond, they can't go through it or around it. So it creates a natural funnel, and there'll be some scrapes in there. And I did some hinge cutting this year on the other side of it to try and tighten it up. Is it a long range travel funnel? No. Like we were talking about at dinner with Bobby, no, that's not it. It's a part in our rut starts really early in South Carolina. So it's a place that the bucks are going to start checking scrapes, and it kind of pinches them down right there because you've got that duck pond that they can't get through, and then a little bit of hinge cutting. So it's kind of a micro funnel, and I'll hunt that in South Carolina. And then we get into the end of October, 1st of November. That's when I make kind of my Midwest run, and that's when I'll be locked into preset stands. 80% of the time they're preset. I know exactly the funnel I'm going to hunt. I've already got a south wind stand, a north wind stand. Everything's tightened up, because that's what I did in the off season. It's ready to go. Some of the places that I can actually blind hunt, I really like to know that there's a good deer in the area. At least I know he's there. But that property in Kentucky, Wells, you haven't been to that. Andrew, you have. That's where 7 long range travel corridors come together at a giant bluff, and that's a place, good genetics, good area, that it's a place you can ride in there, and you've got 2 sides of the funnel that you can hunt. And so that's what I'll do until Thanksgiving, as much as I possibly can. And then that's kind of when I check the box. I have hunted my ass off from August 15th to Thanksgiving, and now it's time for me to reward myself, and that's when I go south. It's Mexico, it's Texas, and it's so much fun. There's big deer, low pressure, lots of rut action, and it's Disney World. I talked about it the other day on something we did. And, if we talk about Safari Club International being the Disneyland for big game hunters. Texas and Mexico is the Disney World Whitetail because it's no pressure, and it's so much fun. So that's kind of my system and what I try to do every single year. And, you guys, you heard what everybody does here, and there's a lot of similarities, but there's differences too. And I think the thing, there's an old saying, a fisherman can always see a fisherman from afar, and it's the same with hunters.
Yeah.
You meet with guys and talk with guys, and pretty much immediately, this dude, he's earned the stripes, he's put his time in, he gets after it. Maybe he's hunting a different way or a different style, but he's got that glow in his eye. And I think everybody in this room is got that glow and is obsessed with it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And I think there's something to all that. One of the things I hate to see above like so many other things, and really especially like, when you're connected to so many hunters, you see so many people that are, you said apples to oranges or oranges to oranges, and I like that comparison. So many guys that are so like, oh, I'm a public land hunter, or oh, I'm a private land guy, or like dislike or put down other people for what they do, or think that, oh, my way's the, but we all do. We're all in it for the same reason, because we love it and are obsessed with it. And there's a lot of things to take away from everybody. Like me and you have talked a lot here lately after like the Kansas hunt and all that. Like, a lot of public land guys think, oh, this is the hardest thing, this and that. But there's challenges with everything. And you can take those challenges like, you know, me and you are never going to hunt the same piece of land, and they're going to be a lot different from each other. But there's stuff that you might say that I pick up on that I can take with me where I'm going, and I could, you know, easily miss something. Guys should take more from each other than what they, you know, what
Check the ego and learn.
Yeah, because
from a guy in his 20s or a guy in his late 40s, or it doesn't matter.
Because even like with the public stuff or private, like, you know, it's a lot different hunting a 100,000 acre block of timber on public land versus, you know, a 100-acre small tract. But if you're hunting a small tract, you know, you got to pay more. You're hunting what you're hunting, so you're having to pick up on things that somebody that can run around and check 100 different places may not necessarily pick up on, or, you know, vice versa. We all have something to learn from each other, and like, it's one of the coolest things to me about being around you guys and doing this, you know, all this is new to me, is just hearing each other talk and what each other do, and like, you know, the similarities and the differences and the stuff you can learn. So I think that's important for people to keep in mind, and keep an open mind too.
Yeah, and there's no like 100%. There's never 100% in the whitetail woods. And there's loops. There are loopholes in everything. There's pros and cons to every single system. I'm a firm believer, do whatever it takes to kill the deer that you're after. Like, if you got to do it, man, you better be doing it, or you ain't going to kill that deer. Like, hey, if you got to use a tree stand instead of a saddle, well, guess what? If you're not using that tree stand, you ain't killing him out of the saddle. Or if you're not in a funnel and you're hunting beds, just going crazy, hunting too many states. Like, there's so many situations, information. We could be here for weeks talking about all the little nuances and details, because the devil's in the details. There's so many details, so we're just doing like a broad spectrum.
Very broad. I mean, we got an hour to talk about.
And then it's like, I went to Johnny Stewart's. We're running around millions of acres of public, free to roam. And then I jump into Kansas, and I'm hunting. All I got's 80 acres to start with, and I'm hunting the rut on 80 acres with no bedding on it, and I'm a bed hunter. Like, what do you do? Here we go, you know? And then I jump back to Iowa that has EHD for 2 straight years, and there's no deer. And I'm just out there watching squirrels every day.
A wing and a prayer.
Yeah. And jumping back and forth. So, I mean, there's so many things that go on.
Yep. And that goes to putting, you said this, and we talking about, and me and one of my friends talk about this all the time, but we call it putting deer in a box. You got to always be looking for what the deer are doing that you don't expect, because when you start kind of narrowing your mind down to thinking like that, you know what all these deer are doing, and the one you're wanting to kill is not. Like, you've got to always keep your eyes open to what you're not expecting, and be willing to learn, whether it's from other guys or, you know, when you're scouting, not missing stuff because you want to think that the deer are doing something. Keeping that open mind. I liked what you were talking about earlier about, you know, I can't remember how exactly you worded it.
Humanizing a deer.
Did what?
Humanizing a deer.
Yes, humanizing the deer.
Saying, yeah.
Yes. That's a huge thing. But I like that you talked about that, because I'm guilty of it. I've done it before. I'm sure everybody has.
Yep. Anything else, boys?
I'm ready for another beer.
Let's get Johnny another beer. All right, guys. Thank you all. We appreciate everybody listening. As always, any questions, comments, follow along with these guys. How does somebody, if you want to follow along and hear more about what you do, what's your Instagram?
My main Instagram is _Drake Deerman. It's real simple. And then me and my brother have a little hunting page that's _ the Whitetail Advantage. It's got, you know, we post most of our kills or videos or anything little like that. But my main page is _Drake Deerman.
Cool. Johnny?
I'm pretty active on Instagram, the Johnny Stewart. I'm going to start doing more e-scouting for people here as the spring gets into summer. Started a YouTube channel last year. This past hunting season.
Yep.
Got a few videos on there. I'm going to keep putting them out, so go subscribe, check it out, and leave a comment there. Tell me what you think.
Yep. Cool. And that's Johnny Stewart on Instagram. The Johnny Stewart on YouTube.
Yep.
Okay, got it. Rendell?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram. Facebook's Rendell _Erik, and the other on Instagram's Rendell _Erik. And I'm trying to ramp up my socials. I think Joe talked me into doing a new podcast too. So
be on the lookout. And if I say this like on a podcast, it means it has to come true. Be on the lookout for Rendell versus Rendell. It's going to be epic, boys.
Yeah.
Have a good night.